So you want to be a DM, huh? You feel that you're ready to ascend to the illustrious title of Dungeon Master. You have read through all the books and supplements and memorized every single last rule. You have slaved for hours upon hours, crafting a highly detailed campaign, complete with setting, storyline, and non-player characters. The floodgates of the realm of high fantasy are about to be thrust open! Or not. Don't worry. Pull up an ale-stained tavern stool and take heed, O bright-eyed newbie DM, for you are about to get a crash course that will have you well on your way to putting together an enjoyable game. Materials. You will need a Dungeon Master's Guide and a Monster Manual. As well, go to wizards.com/DND and download the rules updates for these and other books. It will be well worth your time, for there have been a number of important revisions to the game thus far. Getting started. For a new DM, the very, very, very most important thing is to start learning how to put together interesting encounters and challenges. Depending upon the group, things like storyline and role-playing can be of varying degrees of importance, but if you cannot construct meaningful challenges for the player characters to face, the campaign is doomed to fail. Here is the best advice a new DM can have for building encounters. Bookmark page 56 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. The entries found on this page and the adjoining one give you all the information regarding encounter components, from XP values to monster level recommendations. The tables are easy to read, and if you follow the simple XP budget concept, you can determine how much XP a given encounter of a given difficulty level should be worth. Vary the encounters that the PCs face. This point is expanded on a little bit later in this video. The concept is simple. Different types of challenges of varying degrees of difficulty make things more interesting. Use interesting terrain. A basic square dungeon room is boring. However, if you add a 20-foot ledge that can only be reached by way of a nearly broken ladder, a statue that spits fireballs, and a pit with spikes at the bottom, the room suddenly transforms into a compelling and dangerous place to fight. Think about terrain that can be dangerous or magical, or that requires skills like athletics or acrobatics to properly navigate. See page 67 of the Dungeon Master Guide for some more ideas. If you can follow these 3 basic pieces of advice and pull them off even halfway well, then you will have a fun game going. As well, you'll deserve a pat on the back, because most new DMs lose sight of these fundamentals, and the campaign suffers for it. Don't give yourself a hard time, just try to make things entertaining and learn from your mistakes. That's what everyone has to do. Okay, more about the varied encounters. Here's a simple rule of thumb. 10 encounters of the party's level will gain each character a level. Whether level 1 or level 29, this simple rule does not change. Drawing upon this, here's a good recommendation of what you could prepare for the party to face throughout an entire adventure or a single level of play. And these are in no particular order here. A easy combat encounter, because not all the fights have to be tough. 3 standard combat encounters. A hard combat encounter. This fight should be noticeably challenging. A very hard combat encounter, which this is basically the equivalent of a boss battle. It makes a great climactic encounter. A couple skill challenges, maybe even more, but at least 2. 2 is good. You got to use skill challenges, and that's a whole other thing to learn in of themselves, but just follow the basic guidelines in there and use. You can draw upon the examples in the Dungeon Master Guide. One challenge that's based upon puzzles or just using mental skills like your adventure, wit, or rituals, you can actually read through the different rituals, for example, in the player's handbook, and just based upon what they allow you to do, you can already come up with ideas of ways to create situations that would require such things like rituals or clever thinking to complete. And then a role-playing or social interaction. And this can be a challenge, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a challenge. It can be something where the players have an opportunity to develop their characters, their personal stories, their personalities, and advance the storyline. That's the important thing. If their role-playing is meaningful and advances the storyline and overall enhances the richness of the game, that should be rewarded with XP. And this is by no means an all-inclusive list, but it provides a healthy amount of variety. You may find it may be easier as a new DM to run more combat encounters, but once you've gotten things down, make sure to open up and expand your skills. You'll find that as time goes on, your group as a whole will just naturally gravitate towards their personal likes and tastes, which may be more nuanced than just simply more or less combat. Lastly, just a bit about storyline. Storyline really is the kicker. Storyline can easily be a campaign's weak or its strong point. As a beginner DM, don't worry too much about crafting the world's most involved story. And definitely don't try to build an entire world. If you do want to create your own campaign setting, just start small. Page 206 of the Dungeon Master Guide shows an excellent example of a map that contains basically a portion of a fantasy kingdom. Has some forests, some hills, some towns, just some little things and just some basic descriptions of the different locations. Something like that, that's more than enough to set the backdrop of a beginning campaign. And then as the party adventures, the world and its NPCs will just naturally flesh out around them. Just real quick, another page 102 of the Dungeon Master Guide gives some great advice about storylines, quests, and adventure ideas. It's definitely worth reading through. I want to thank you all for listening to this video. Definitely check out my other videos, my D&D videos, and my non-D&D videos if you're so inclined. And let me know what you think. If you have any feedback, feel free to pass it on to me. I pretty much try to get back to everybody for the most part. So this was Esper again. Thank you and happy gaming.